Hello. The question I'm trying to answer today is what does one find when attempting to search for images of jousting? And what do 14th century manuscripts and representations actually tell us about jousting in tournaments? What are the challenges and the rewards of this limited collection of surviving evidence? What the evidence lacks in quantity, it makes up for in quality, and seems to speak volumes in the nature of jousting in the time period. I believe there to be four purposes of jousting in the Middle Ages. First, authors such as Villers-Douane characterized tournaments and jousting in a pragmatic light. They were a way for knights to practice their skills in preparation for real battles, such as crusades, and the knights sometimes even maimed their opponents. Additionally, they served as an opportunity for military elites to showcase their prowess, skills, talents, and strength in order to impress women, intimidate rivals, or win the approval and the praise of aristocratic and royal members of society. Also, jousting was most likely viewed as a form of merrymaking and recreation by the knights, as tournaments took place during peacetime in anticipation of wars or crusades. Lastly, as we see here, jousting began to appear as a type of brilliantly colored performance or show, designed to be performed in front of an exhilarated audience. Thus, with that in mind, I came to the realization that the performance aspect of jousting seemed to dominate within my collection of gathered sources. Jousting seems to have evolved from a private, small-scale war to a public, simulated, dramatic spectacle. We see the horses become elaborately dressed, many times representing allegiance to one particular side or another. In the book Jousting in Medieval and Renaissance Iberia, it is stated that oftentimes knights and their valiant steeds would dress up as certain characters in a battle and act out those characters' courageous exploits for the crowd to enjoy. The brightly colored garb of the horses and the flamboyant armor and helmets of the knights further adds to the visually enticing and compelling aspects of the joust. In many of these depictions, we also see an audience in the background, cheering on or intently watching the combatants. Thus, we can deduce that the knights who participated in these affairs were just as admired as many sports superstars are in the modern world. Additionally, these events also appeared to be a means for royal or aristocratic individuals who would never step foot in the field of battle to experience firsthand the violence, tension, showmanship, and exhilaration of war. Another way that we see the entertainment factor become very pervasive in the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries is through the more easily breakable and presumably not so lethal lances used for show, not killing. On account of the many fancy dresses and crowns donned by members of the crowd, I believe we can reasonably conclude that these events and the evidence representing them were primarily intended to be enjoyed by the higher social classes, or the wealthier members of society. A limitation that is presented with the surviving evidence is its inability to clearly and effectively portray these other purposes of jousting that I spoke about earlier. It is clear that jousting was seen as entertainment, but we seem to have to speculate on whether or not it actually helped the knights against real adversaries like the Saracens. Ultimately, our sources are limited, but what we can learn from the nature of the surviving evidence is that jousting for the knights was both practice, competition, and putting on a show, and for the people observing, it was a form of leisure and enjoyment. And if we are able to extract nothing else from these images, we can take a page out of Joinville's Life of Saint Louis and just sit back and appreciate the exquisite fabrics worn by the competitors. That's all the time I have. Thank you for a great semester, Professor, and have a good summer.